Welcome, everyone, back to another episode of Combating Cancer. My name is Gwen Kelly, and I'm your host. A little bit of background information about me for my first-time listeners here is that I was diagnosed with stage 3 astrocytoma brain cancer at 19. And the reason why I created this platform is because I wanted to have a safe space for those who are either in active treatment, in remission, or have lost a loved one to come on and share their experiences, because cancer is a terrible disease and no one should have to fight alone. So today I have a special guest. I have Ingrid Blanco. Ingrid and I actually went to high school together. And when I originally posted on social media that I was launching Combating Cancer, she was like in my comments right away.
Yeah, we got to support,
Yes. And it was like, oh, a little blast from the past. And I was just excited we were able to connect again.
Yeah, same feeling, mutual feelings here. You're always so sweet and kind, and your story is inspirational, and you're inspirational in what you're doing right now.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. So today, Ingrid is actually going to come on and share her experience of having multiple family members being touched by cancer and actually losing them. So why don't you give us some background about your family?
Yeah, of course. I've had 3 family members that were affected with cancer, and it's all on my mom's side. It ended up being my grandma first, then my aunt, and then my uncle. My uncle was the most recent one. That was about a year ago in July. It was stage 3 cancer. Them going through a very hard process of trying to find ways to feel better because of the pain. All 3 of them kind of dealt with chronic and severe pain. So it was really just trying to find medications to make them feel comfortable. But all of them had such a strong will to fight. So it was constantly trying new medications, trying to see if they could get strong enough for chemo. My grandma actually tried to get a surgery to get part of her cancer removed. It ended up not going well. That's part of why she passed. The surgery was a little bit too much for her. My aunt went through some chemo sessions, but it was a little bit too much for her body. She was very small, and, cancer does slowly take a lot physically on a person. So she was just not strong enough as time went on. But yeah, that's kind of just a general idea as to my grandma and my aunt. They passed away in the same month, but different years. So that was a little bit hard too. My grandma ended up passing away January 12th. And then my aunt a year later, January 28th. It's already hard dealing with a lot of the emotions that come from grieving someone who passes, to then jumping in right away into another family member going through like all this process of trying to get better from cancer. You don't really have a time to kind of sit back and be like, okay, I'm just grieving. No, it's like you're back in action trying to figure out what can we do next for my aunt. So I think it was just a lot of emotions at once. And it was hard because they were in Mexico and we were here. My mom and I could not travel to Mexico due to our immigration status. So we couldn't be there physically for them. I mean, I feel like when you're going through something like that, you want to be right next to that person. You want to hold their hand. You want to, just get them a cup of water when they need it. Just those little small things. And we weren't able to do that from the distance. And I think that was probably one of the hardest things I've experienced, was trying to be there for my family members, but not being able to be there physically.
Well, first of all, I'm sorry. That's got to be just so traumatic to have to deal with, and especially not being able to go and see them. I'm sure you felt a little bit of guilt, even though that's not your fault. That was just a circumstance at hand. And I'm just kind of curious, like you talked about how, unfortunately, 2 of them both passed away in January. So I'm sure January is a very hard month for you, especially with it being the holiday season and everything. You had spoken about not being able to have that time to grieve the person that you lost. You basically went into action mode of, and now someone else is sick. What do I do?
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel during that entire time? Were you trying to grieve the loss of someone while still trying to hold this strong foundation for your family?
My grandma, when she was diagnosed, I feel like we were all taken aback because my mom's side of the family was pretty healthy overall. So just hearing the word cancer was kind of like, well, what? Like, we had no experience with any illnesses or anything like that with that family. So I feel like it was all a learning process. So we were taking everything in, like what testing needed to be done, all this stuff. So it was just kind of emotions of shock and denial and trying to be on the phone, schedule appointments from afar, trying to help them out and stuff like that. And when my grandma was going to go through the surgery that was going to take off that tumor, we were explained the risks that could happen with getting surgery. You know, things could always go wrong during a surgery. The body could react wrong. There could be an infection. She was already weak. Her immune system was already really bad. So we knew the risks, and everyone was willing to take those risks to hopefully hope that they were able to take some of the cancer off, or if not everything, right? When she passed, I feel like everyone was still kind of in denial in a way, because when she got surgery, we were kind of hoping, we were all praying, we were like, oh, everything's gonna maybe be okay. And if they don't get everything off, maybe she'll start chemo. You know, when we got the call that she was declining and she got an infection, her body started swelling up a lot and she was going to pass, I feel like it was kind of like, that's not true. There's no way. There's no way. And it was our first time experiencing any type of big loss like that too. So we did not plan in advance for her to pass. We weren't thinking, oh, like what funeral? What do we do with her stuff? We were so unprepared for that situation. It was unexpected.
It's one of those things too where you hear about cancer, but you don't think you or someone you know is going to be affected by cancer.
Right. You're like, what? That's like a movie thing. Like, I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense. You know, you hear it, but like, you're never going to think, oh, that's going to be my situation. I agree. It was just kind of like, what's going on? And we're trying to understand everything and nothing's making sense. And why my grandma? My grandma was so healthy. She literally didn't drink. She didn't smoke. She didn't do anything. She ate good food. Like, she was healthy, everything. So it's like, why my grandma? And she was young too. So I think it was just those initial reactions. And then my aunt started feeling like a little bit sick, but we weren't sure why. So she did not know that she had cancer going on that whole time that my grandma was sick. And she finally ended up going to the hospital to get checked. And they ended up finding that she also had a tumor. So that explained a lot. Her appetite started going down. And listening to her kind of tell us like, hey, this is what the doctors found was kind of like another shock. Hold on. We just lost my grandma. And my mom, she was going through it too. I think it was hard for me to see my mom go through such an emotional roller coaster, because my mom had just lost her mom and now she's dealing with her sister who is going through a similar thing, and she is just not well. She's not well mentally, and trying to be strong for my mom, trying to be like motivating to my mom, you know, was really hard, because I also lost my grandma and now dealing with my aunt with this, and it feels like it's just a lot emotionally, but I'm trying to be strong for my mom because I fear for like how my mom is feeling, you know?
Well, and it has to be difficult for you too, and I'm sure this isn't something you'd want to admit out loud, and maybe you thought this to yourself, but you know, your grandma just passed away, your mom's sister's going through treatment and eventually passed away. And I'm sure as being a daughter, you're kind of questioning or thinking, is this going to happen to my mom as well?
Yeah. Well, I even thought like, what are the chances of us getting it as well? Everything starts going through your head. And my aunt has 3 daughters and they're much younger. So my mom would try to stay strong and try to motivate my aunt to try anything that she could to get better. You know, if they're telling me you can do chemo, do chemo. And my mom also has 2 other brothers, which is my uncle Ivan and my uncle Juan. And they're also motivating because they're in Mexico. Everyone's in Mexico and they're all like motivating, like, yeah, do chemo and do this, do that. And it was taking a toll on my aunt for sure. Doing chemo was probably hard on her body for sure, because she was just declining more and more. But I think that was hard because they had more hope because she was younger, and they thought because she was younger and she was, you know, a little bit more healthy, I guess, and she had her kids, like there was no way that my aunt was going to pass. There is no way. That was kind of like the mindset everyone was having. What, a year later after my grandma, like the timing is just so odd. So then there we go again, going through denial, but trying to also grieve my grandma. So it's a little bit difficult there. I mean, my grandma and my aunt were some of the sweetest people ever. They would call on the phone, ask how I'm doing. It's so weird how you can have such a strong connection with someone so far away, even though I only met them when I was up to 3 years old. That's how much time I had with them. But they were some of the closest family members I had to this day because they would just always call and ask how we're doing. I was with a program called DACA, which basically gives me the opportunity to go to school, to get a driver's license, to have a job due to my immigration status. And the only way you can go to Mexico is through an application called advanced parole. And you basically apply to get permission to travel for some sort of reason, but you have to have a reason. You can't just travel for vacation. And they give you a certain time frame. They're like, yes, you're approved. You can go for this time, but you have to come back at certain date, whatever. And I had applied for that after my grandma passed away because that was finally my reason to go. It was sad that that had to be the reason why I had to go, but it gave me a way to finally be able to see my family, hopefully. So I had applied, and you basically just wait around. You wait around to hear what that response is. During this time, we're going through my aunt's situation where she's still fighting this and fighting cancer. So I'm hoping that I get a response before things get worse. That's kind of what I'm thinking, because I'm like, I really want to see her. Like, I want to see her. I want to hug her. I want to be there for her. But you can't. You can't really do anything. You kind of feel a little bit like helpless because you're just supporting from afar. But my aunt ends up getting worse. She ends up having to go to the hospital again after being at home for a bit, because she gets an infection and she starts just getting really, really bad. Her body can't handle it, and she does end up passing away in the hospital, which ends up being very difficult because I do get my approval letter probably like 2 months after she passes. So it ends up being a little bit hard to go back to Mexico, knowing that I will not see them there physically. I always envisioned that when I would go back to Mexico, they would be standing like right there. So knowing that the two people that I wanted to see were not going to be there was really hard. Sorry.
Oh, you're good. This is what this platform is all about, of getting these emotions out and having these hard conversations, because I'm sure other people have experienced these exact same things. And you are so courageous for being this vulnerable about it, because you are helping someone else by sharing your story.
Thank you. It's a pain that I will never be able to explain. And going to Mexico back again and seeing family was so bittersweet, because I got to connect with family members that I hadn't seen in like ever. And the hard part was that my mom doesn't get the same opportunity. So it was just my sister and I that got the approval to go, but my mom couldn't. And I always felt this guilt of being able to see family, and my mom didn't. My grandpa made like a little, I don't even know what you call it, just like a memory table for my aunt and my grandma. They were cremated. So it has like their little cute box and pictures of them, and just a little memorial table, basically. And I was able to see that in person, and that helped me a lot with like closure, since I wasn't able to be there next to them. So I just feel like sometimes that guilt of not being able to give that opportunity to my mom, because that was her mom and that was her sister. She never got to give them one last hug. I don't know. It's really hard in that sense, like for everyone, for my mom, for like myself, everyone involved was just going through like such heavy emotions. And it's hard to go back to quote unquote normal life again after that, because you kind of feel like this constant guilt of this just happened. How do you just go back to doing all this fun stuff, or just living your life, working and doing all this stuff, when you just had someone go through this really traumatic experience? But those were kind of the emotions there. A lot of sadness, of course. And as time goes on, I mean, I feel like everyone feels a little bit of anger, not being able to have an explanation as to why these things happen. Or, everyone goes through misplaced anger too. Could the doctor have done something better? Could the nurse have done this better, or something like that, And that's just part of it, part of the grieving process. Everyone goes through all these emotions at different times. And I got to see that. I mean, with my mom, she felt a lot of anger because these people were just taken away from her in 1 year. Within 1 year, she had lost two of the most important people in her life. So it was hard. Going through another funeral thing again is just so unreal, having to talk to funeral homes all over again, which is something you don't expect to do all within 1 year either. So we obviously were a little bit more prepared for my aunt. It was still hard, of course. But yeah, that's kind of with them too. Difficult feelings there. I think with my uncle, that was probably one of the hardest experience I've had personally because I have my green card now and I can travel to Mexico. When my uncle got his diagnosis last year that they found cancer again in his body, I remember he told us that he had it again and that it was getting worse. When my mom got that call, I immediately went on Delta and just booked a flight. I was like, if I have to go to Mexico alone, I'll go alone because my sister didn't have approval yet. And the only person who could go with me was my stepdad, but he would need to ask his job for time off. But I was not thinking about that at that point. I think the second I heard, hey, the cancer's back, I just booked a flight.
You were like, you have the ability to go now. You're not waiting.
I'm not waiting. And, my parents were a little bit upset in the beginning because they were like, you didn't plan anything. You're just like going. You're not even waiting to see if your stepdad can go. You're just making a really fast decision. And I was like, I don't know, but I feel something in me that tells me like, I need to go see him. I'm going to go for 2 weeks. I need to be there. I cannot miss this opportunity of like being there for someone I care about when they're going through this again. I can't believe we're going through this again, but like, I need to be there. So I end up going by myself, which is a very big thing for me because I don't like traveling by myself. I don't like really going anywhere by myself, really. So I'm stepping fully out of my comfort zone to go travel. I'm like, whatever, it's okay. I end up showing up, and background story here. My uncle had been getting a little bit worse as time went on. When I booked the flight, it was for a month after because I had school going on, so I couldn't book it like right then and there. During that 1 month, he was going to get checks, and he actually got kind of like, it looked like a little G tube in a way, and it was draining some stuff that he had going on in his stomach. The doctor had told him that from that procedure and just like how bad his cancer was, he was kind of estimating that my uncle was going to have about 6 months to live. That's if he didn't start chemo. He said, if you start chemo, you'll probably have a longer lifespan, but about 6 months. So when I arrived to Mexico, my uncle is barely at month 1. So like, I'm not expecting to see him in his last days, like at all. I'm just expecting to be there to support him emotionally and physically. I get to Mexico, I surprise the family. I see my grandpa, my cousins. It's all really sweet and emotional. And they tell me that my uncle is in his room and that he didn't want to come out because he was really tired. So I go put my stuff down in the room that I was staying at, and I go to his room and I knock. I go in and I see him laying on the bed. And for a second, I didn't think it was my uncle because he did not look anything like he did when I last saw him. I tried to hold everything in when I saw him because, Gwen, when I tell you when I saw him, I knew he didn't have many days left.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like held it in and went close to him, and I was like, hey, who are you? How you doing? And it's so good to see you. And I hadn't told him I was going, so he was really happy and he was smiling, and we started crying together, and he's like, I'm so glad you're here. And we just had like a really sweet moment together, but I try to like keep it in as much as possible to not let him know that it scared me to see him the way I saw him, So the couple days go by, I start to notice that he's just getting like weaker and weaker. But my uncle was pushing so hard. He was pushing so hard to find a way to get the cancer to go away. So he was still going to like labs to get his blood drawn. And it was a good distance away. Like from where he lived, we had to go on a taxi for like half an hour to an hour sometimes to the hospitals to get scans, to get checks. And the cars in Mexico aren't really wheelchair friendly at all. So I'm having to almost carry him into the car with my grandpa. And we're trying to put the wheelchair in the back. It's just like all these difficult things that he was going through, but he was still pushing. Like he did not care. He would wake up every morning. Okay, we have to go to lab. We have to go do this. And he was always trying to figure out a way to how do I get better? And his appetite slowly started going away too. He wasn't really eating much because he would like vomit almost everything. And that's part of it too. Like when you're getting medications or when you're just going through it, cancer starts taking over your body and starts rejecting almost anything that is helpful to you. So I work in memory care and assisted living, and a lot of the residents I have, we give them Ensure, the protein shake, to help them get their protein that way. So I ended up buying him some cases of Ensure over there, but he was only able to take little sips. And that was pretty much it. He wasn't eating much. Family was trying to buy him food. It was just not working. He would go back to the doctor that told him he had 6 months to live. And the doctor would tell him that he just had to get stronger. He had to try to eat more because at the weight that he wasn't able to do chemo. He said, we'll just focus on eating and trying to drink more of that protein shake, and we'll see if you're ready for chemo. But right now where you're at, you're not ready for that. But never once did the doctor tell him hey, I think you should just focus on just being at home. So because my uncle never got those words, there's no more fighting this, my uncle kept fighting. And everyone else kept fighting too, because there was never that, you guys should just focus on him resting. And I think that was frustrating for me to see, because I could see it. Like I told you, when I saw him the first time, I just knew he had a few days left. He was very small. He had lost so much weight, and he was not a skinny guy. He was bigger, and you could literally see his skin and bones. That's how skinny he was. And he was yellow, and I could see it. So I was surprised why no one else could see it. Family kept pushing him to eat, kept telling him, you should eat. And he was trying his best. And it was just really hard because everyone around me was just kind of fighting. And I felt like I wanted to scream, everyone, he just needs to rest.
Yeah.
We just need to stop. That's where I felt frustration and kind of just upset that, I didn't know how to say that. I didn't know how to say hey, I see it coming.
I think it's one of those things where I'm sure the other family members were also very aware of what was going on. But, when you actually say the words out loud, it makes it real.
It becomes real life. So when I got there, probably a week later was when he started to really, really decline. I'm talking some extreme pain. Any medication he would take was just not working, at all. We would massage his back, massage his feet. We got different cushions for his bed to help him sleep better, but he was just not sleeping well. When he was going through this, he tried to be very independent as much as he could. He tried to do everything himself, but there came a point where he wasn't able to really do much of that anymore. And he kind of had to let other people help him. When his wife wasn't there, he would be very hesitant to let us help him. He was no, I can put my shirt on by myself, or no, I can give myself a shower. Towards the end of his days, I remember one day I ended up having to give him a shower because he needed one. And that day, it was just I knew it was getting towards the end, because he was letting me do it. He was letting me give him the shower. And he ended up having a seizure in the shower too. If it wasn't for me being there, he probably would have been on the floor or hurt himself even worse. I had put a chair in the shower and everything, and he had a seizure, and he was very, very scared. That's kind of when I knew things were coming to an end pretty soon, because his body started having all these symptoms and effects that hey, the body is kind of shutting down now.
I'm sorry you had to see that too. I know that can be very scary, traumatic.
It was, and part of me is grateful that I am in the medical field too, where I was able to determine that was a seizure that he was having. So I didn't freak out in that moment. I was just worried, okay, make sure his head's okay, make sure he doesn't hit anything. And I was timing his seizure too, just to make sure. Yeah, it was hard. It was hard to see him go through that, because I know it scared him. He was really, really scared, and he wasn't really showing any times in his face. You couldn't see that he was scared until that moment. So I knew that was a turning point for him too. So I think that was harder for me, just knowing how he was feeling. We told the doctor and everything, but he did just say keep taking these medications, just keep resting. The body is just really overstressed right now. And that's what we did. He ended up just throwing up everything he was eating. He wasn't able to take any more little sips of protein shakes anymore. I was in Mexico already probably around 8 days when that started to happen. And then he had asked that he get IV fluids in from the doctor when he had went the last time, because it helped him a lot feel better, because it's just an automatic way of getting you hydration versus you having to take your own water. So he wanted to do that again when he was feeling really, really bad at his house, but we weren't able to get him out of bed because he was in so much pain. So how are we going to get him in the taxi to go to an hour drive to the hospital? So he was trying to ask me to have me do it, but I was I can't. I don't have the supplies. And as an LPN, we don't get taught how to do IVs or anything like that. And I was I can't. I don't want to hurt you. I can't do that. And I think I felt very helpless in that moment, I was like, I don't feel like I'm helpful at all because I can't do this thing for him. Like, just put a simple IV and give him some fluids. That was really hard, but we were able to find someone nearby that was a nurse, and she was able to do IV fluids on him. But the IV fluids weren't enough. They weren't helping anymore. And then the nurse told us, like, hey, have you guys talked to the doctor? Like, I really think we're coming towards the last few days that he has left. And she was telling this to me and his wife because she didn't want to say it in front of anyone else. And we were like kind of what you said before, like no one really like wants to say it out loud because then it becomes real. And that's kind of when things became real for myself and my aunt, because we heard the nurse say like, yeah, I think he has like probably 2 days left. That's probably as much as I would give him. And we were like, oh my gosh, it's true. Like what we're seeing is like, it's coming to life in a way. I try to tell my uncle, not my uncle who was sick, but my other uncle who would come visit him. I try to tell him like, hey, my uncle does not have much time to live. And he basically was like, no, that's not true. Like, I just lost my mom and my sister. It can't be true. He just needs to eat more. And I was like, no, he can't eat more. He's literally taking out everything he's eating. Like, he can't eat more. And he was like, no, like he just needs to eat more. You guys need to push him to eat more. Like, I'll go get him some more shakes. Like, I will go get him more smoothies. He just needs to get strong so he can do chemo. Like, why would you say that? So that was another hard moment, like telling family members, hey, this is what's going on. This is what's going to happen. And them also processing that in the moment and then going through denial as well was another hard situation. And I also got to tell my grandpa that too, because my grandpa was there the whole time. And his reaction was a little bit different in the sense where he didn't really speak much after I told him, like letting him know that my uncle didn't have much time left. He was just like, okay. And I think that probably hurt me more too, because it's kind of like you're used to it, because he had just seen his wife pass. He had seen his daughter, and now he's seeing his son. Like, you're not supposed to experience your children's death before yourself.
Yeah, and I'm sure he honestly became a little bit numb to the situation at hand, and I'm sure it was super painful for you having to sit down and tell everyone in your family, like, hey, we don't have that much time, and especially being so young, like that is such a huge role that you had to take on.
It was hard for sure. I'm also grateful I was able to do it, because I don't know who else would have been able to tell everyone that, because just seeing all their emotions, they were all going through their own like emotion stuff. So although it was really hard for me, I'm grateful that I was able to be there for them and tell them what was going on. But yeah, it was definitely very interesting to see and painful to see how everyone was kind of grieving differently, and how they were reacting to the news was very different for everyone. My stepdad was able to get work off because I had called him and told him like, hey, my uncle is doing really bad. I really need you to be here. Like, I need you to come. He was able to come to Mexico and get there just in time to spend my uncle's last few days with everyone. And I think just like the days, it felt weird because you would try to kind of do your day-to-day stuff, but also checking on my uncle, because my uncle didn't want us to be there like all the time with him. He didn't want us to be like, how do you say, like babysitting him? Like, he didn't want us to be like all the time, oh, are you okay? He wanted us to just keep doing our stuff. He'd be like, go eat over there. And I was like, oh, well, I can eat here with you. Like, no, go eat. He didn't want us to stop doing what we were doing and living our lives just because of what was going on with him. But that was really hard too, you know, like he felt like this guilt trying to spend time with family, but also like knowing, hey, my uncle's going through this.
Yeah.
I think it's something that I'll always remember too, just like being there with him and in a way kind of taking care of him is something that I hope, I don't wish it upon anybody. Just knowing that the final days are near and you're just kind of there, you feel very like hopeless and helpless, and just it's hard to do that. And I didn't have much experience with it before. Yeah, losing my grandma and my aunt was extremely difficult, but I wasn't there physically. So it was a different type of pain I was feeling now. But when he passed away in his room, and it was a very long day that day. All got a different type of closure there because my grandma and aunt had passed away in the hospital. So not really anyone was allowed because it was during COVID. So no one was really able to be there next to them. Whereas with my uncle, since he passed away at his house in his room, a lot of family, a lot of neighbors actually too, that were there for years, like all came to say goodbye to him. It was nice to have that like half family there, and we all got to say our goodbyes. So we got to play the music for him and basically see him take his last breath on earth. And yeah, that's how his story went. Unfortunately, there was no cure, no treatment, no chemo, no opportunity for him to do that just because of how weak he got. But I just know like he tried his best to try to stay in this world, to try to fight because he had, kids too. But it just wasn't possible. And I will never understand it. And that's okay. I think it's okay to sometimes not understand why things happen, but it's something that was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to see. I have seen a lot in healthcare, but when it's your own family, it's really, really different. And cancer is horrible.
It is horrible. And just once again, I really appreciate your openness and honesty that you've been sharing throughout this entire episode. Cancer is a terrible disease and it takes away so many amazing people. And it's so hard to grasp and understand everything that's going on when this occurs. But I really appreciate you coming on today and sharing your story. You are so unbelievably brave and honest.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate you for letting me speak and letting me share my story. And I love what you're doing. I think that, there's so many people that get affected by cancer, like not just the patient itself, but also the family. I mean, friends too. I'm sure it's a different type of pain that everyone kind of goes through. And I just hope that more people talk about it because, it's something that you kind of do feel alone. You feel alone sometimes when you're going through all that. But thank you again for allowing me to speak.
Of course. Well, that is all I have today for combating cancer. I want to thank Ingrid again for coming on. As always, please feel free to share this story to anyone you know, or if you or someone you know want to come on or have a sponsorship inquiry, please feel free to reach out to me. Everything will be linked down in the show notes below. I'll talk to you guys next Wednesday.